AMD stock had a pretty horrible 2024. Year to date, a few days before the year ends, the stock is down roughly 10%. On today's episode, what I want to do is take a closer look at my overall thoughts for 2025 and what are some questions investors who are planning to hold this stock in 2025 should have. Now, let me just start off with my overall thoughts. I'm going to say I think AMD is going to have a weak first half of 2025, but it's going to be followed by a stronger second half of the year. Let me explain why. And like I mentioned, this is not a company I consider the next NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA year to date has done amazing, up 184%. While AMD is not the next NVIDIA, it doesn't mean it can't perform well. So let's get started. But before, make sure to hit the thumbs up, make sure to hit the subscribe button, check out the pinned comment for special offers at fool.com/Jose, and check out my free semiconductor newsletter, whatthechip.happened.com. Daily newsletter, completely free. Link is down below.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
So like I mentioned, right, AMD right now sitting at 125. Luckily, if you've been watching this channel, very early on the year, we saw the stock jump to 200 levels, right? I've talked about it. You can go back to the pre-March, where I believed AMD at those levels was not the right call. Luckily, we discussed that, but now I'm feeling the opposite. I believe anything under 150 is where AMD is looking very attractive, right? And I'm happy we're getting at these levels because it's giving me time to accumulate shares, to increase my overall position. This is my number 2 biggest position in my overall portfolio. Number 1 is NVIDIA, leading the charts with over 25% of my portfolio being in NVIDIA. Main reason, I was an early investor there, so pretty much letting those wins continue to win for me. Now, AMD is also one I've been an early investor. I'm overly up in it, but AMD right now has kind of fallen in the shadows of NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA has done amazing with AI chips. Now, unfortunately, AMD, while it has done great, it's expected to do at least $5 billion. It's nowhere near the multi-billions of dollars that NVIDIA is doing in chips. And right now, when we take a closer look at the AI chip market, it's pretty much in those that are making money, AMD is bottom on the line, right? You have NVIDIA pretty much demolishing the AI chip market. Outside of that, you have big tech player developing their own AI chips. And that's where you have companies like Broadcom, like Marvell. And we've seen recently, year to date, both those companies are doing amazing. Broadcom year to date up 127%. And Marvell, if we look at it on the year to date basis, is up over 95%, right? So we can see that the custom chip solution is doing even better than AMD. And the main reason is most investors have this thought process. First, everybody's going to go buy NVIDIA chips. Then after everybody's bought NVIDIA chips, they're going to continue to develop their own AI chips and go with companies like Broadcom and Marvell. And that's why we're seeing that excitement on these two players. Then the third down the list of those that are making money, right? There's other AI chips out there in the market, but I want to say from those that are making money, it's only going to be NVIDIA, it's only going to be Marvell, Broadcom, and AMD. After you do all that, then you go to AMD, and AMD is kind of the bottom of the line there in forms of investing mindset, in my opinion. Now, the reason AMD, we can see here from its overall revenue in the past 3 years, even though there's this huge AI acceleration, revenue hasn't really jumped up much. I mean, the revenue in 2023 was kind of not much lower than where it's at right now, right? We're right now at 24 billion on a trailing 12 months. We can see here in January of 2023 was closer to like 23 billion. So not much growth, even though there's been this huge push of AI. For those that are not familiar with AMD, the main reason that there hasn't been much growth is while AMD does provide data center solutions in forms of CPUs, in forms of GPUs, their main market is the consumer market with their CPUs and their gaming products, right? Mainly their CPUs or which they call their client for PCs, for laptops, right? And right now we are kind of seeing this inventory correction still taking place. We've heard from various earnings. Micron just about a week ago mentioned the memory that they're still seeing weakness in kind of PCs that the AI PC trend is taking a little bit longer to really grow. So that's the main reason. You're seeing at least a nice push in the data centers, but right now, the consumer space is still not much of a tailwind. I do believe in the upcoming quarters, though, this is going to be a nice tailwind, and we're going to see this trailing 12 months revenue for AMD go up for various reasons. We're going to see the embedded market go up. We're going to see the client market go up, which is the PCs and the laptops, and we're going to see the data center go up as they make a little bit more sales in AI GPUs, as they make a little bit more sales in their server CPU products as well, and continue to take market share from players like Intel. And at the beginning of this video, I mentioned, hey, that I believe AMD is going to have a weak first half and a strong second half in forms of stock price. But some might be wondering, Jose, why would you say that but still be bullish in the stock? And why are you buying the stock at these levels? And there's two main reasons, right? The first main reason is obviously I could be wrong. I could be wrong with the timing, right? Maybe we might actually have a really great first half and second half in forms of stock price because they give us some great news in form of great data center sales, great GPU sales, and great consumer sales, right? So there could be that tailwind that comes in a little bit earlier than I expected, which could drive the stock price. So I could be wrong. And for that reason, I don't mind buying at levels where I believe valuation is sitting somewhat attractive. I mean, PE ratio forward, which is the end of this fiscal year, which ends about 3-4 days from now, is at 37, right? 37.67. While it is maybe a little bit expensive, I don't think it's that expensive for the risk to reward, right? If I'm wrong and revenue doesn't really grow much from here, then we're going to stay around these PE ratios, which isn't that insane. If I'm right and the tailwinds come, these PE ratio can get a lot smaller and we can see the stock price increase as well. So the risk to reward ratio, in my opinion, is very high for AMD in the long term of things. So I don't want to time it because I'm not normally wrong at timing the market. That's the first reason. The second reason is I'm a long-term investor, very much long-term investor, that money that I've put in multiple years ago are still in my portfolio. I don't really take out money out of my portfolio. This is something that I just want to grow over time, right? NVIDIA, I invested multiple years ago, and now is when I'm really to start to see my real returns out of it. And I'm hoping that's going to happen with AMD, where I don't mind investing that money now. I don't need that money now. So I could really care less what happens this quarter or next quarter. But I believe in the long term of things, this is going to be a great return for my overall investment, or has the great probability of being great, right? So that's why I'm willing to invest now, even though I believe the first half might be weak. Now that we understand my overall thought process on AMD, I kind of want to discuss what are some of the questions investors should have for 2025. And the first question, we kind of talked about it, is how will the PC market do? Will AI PC drive more sales for CPU? I believe the answer is going to be yes. I just don't know when it's going to happen. Is it going to happen in quarter one? Is it going to happen in quarter two when companies start to buy CPU products as they start to build up their inventory for the holiday season, right? So it's all dependent on how the consumer market and how consumer spending is going to go through the rest of 2025, especially as we get closer to that holiday season. So and also it all depends on the innovation of AI PCs. Does the new AI PC make me want to buy a new PC in general? When was the last time I bought a PC? And I believe a nice amount of answers we will get during CES this upcoming January in just a few weeks from now, right? So I believe this can give us a great indication of what kind of consumer products we can see with AI, and will that drive more revenue selection for the PC market? I believe the answer is going to be yes. I just don't know which quarter. Now, the second question is going to be, how will the embedded market do? And the embedded market, unfortunately, continues to see a bit of a weakness. This is one of the company's biggest cash flow machines. And the embedded market, I believe, is a great opportunity for AMD. It's going to be one of those tailwinds in the future. But right now, in the most recent quarter, it actually saw revenue down 25% year over year. And they mentioned that the demand continues recovering gradually. So it's a small recovery led by strength in test and emulation, offset by ongoing softness in the industrial market. So eventually, I believe this is going to be a tailwind. And I believe that tailwind is also going to happen in 2025. So we're going to see how the industrial market needs to continue to grow in the upcoming quarters, because again, that can be another thing that fuels the growth for AMD. Now, the third question, which is the most important question, is how are AI accelerator sales going to do? Right? We know AMD has the MI300, and they are now releasing the MI325X production in quarter 4 and going to systems in quarter 1 of 2025. So how is the MI325X going to do? I personally don't believe the MI300 or the MI325 are going to do any crazy numbers in revenue. I have actually heard some podcasts where for 2025, AMD's data center GPU sales market share is going to decrease in forms of percentage. That doesn't necessarily mean that revenue is going to go down. Remember, the AI accelerator market is growing at rapid levels, so that market share is growing. AMD can still grow its revenue in forms of absolute numbers, but be losing market share because of they're growing at a slower pace than the overall market. Even if they grow AI sales, I think that's going to be bullish, but I'm not too bullish for AMD for the MI300 or the MI325. I think I'm going to start to get really excited when we hear more about the 350, and the one that I believe can be a big change for AMD is going to be the 400 series. And that's going to come out during the same time where hopefully this CT acquisition goes on. Because for AMD, it's no longer just about building one chip. It's about building a system. And this is something that NVIDIA is doing, right? And this is why I love NVIDIA. NVIDIA is a market maker. AMD, at the end of the day, seems to be more of a market taker and trying to solidify itself in this AI space that kind of NVIDIA has created. Just because you're a market taker, in my opinion, doesn't mean bad. I mean, if you're a great asset at a great valuation and you can get great returns, obviously you could be a great investment. And I think that's where it stands for AMD. AMD, the MI350 and the MI400, we're going to see some great improvements, in my opinion, for their AI GPU sales. But all that is dependent on how the AI market is going. Is the AI market evolving? Is AMD increasing its software solutions, right? Another weakness that AMD has is their software market, while it is improving, it still has far ways to go before catching up to NVIDIA. And I don't think it's going to catch up to NVIDIA anytime soon, but there have ways to improve it. In a recent podcast that I listened to at BG2 with Dylan Patel, they mentioned that NVIDIA actually has a supercomputer where their software engineers are constantly working on to develop more software solutions. AMD doesn't have anything like that. So AMD is not truly investing as much as they can, from what we hear in that podcast, in the software space. Lisa Su, in my opinion, has to continue to invest heavily in that space and maybe be a little bit more aggressive. If they are a little bit more aggressive, that can definitely be a very bullish take for AMDs and software improvement in general. Now, in forms of AI chips, there is one more other thing that investors should be considering. There are two types of groups that are joining right now, and that is UA-Link, where it's a lot of big companies trying to combat NVIDIA's NVLink, which is the ability to really talk with GPUs among systems. So UA-Link, AMD is working with a lot of big players to develop this networking solution. I want to hear more about it. We're expected to hear more about it here in the first quarter of 2025, I believe. And the other one is Ultra Ethernet. Ultra Ethernet is another market that AMD investors should know. So Ultra Ethernet is trying to kind of combat NVIDIA's infinite band switches and kind of their Spectrum X in forms of Ultra Ethernet. So it's kind of creating that Ethernet solution for the AI market, where traditional Ethernet is not the best way around it. So AMD is also part of that. If we see improvements in these two kind of groups and see some form of standard, it could definitely be a way that AMD can combat some of the moats that NVIDIA has created. Right, so this is why I believe AMD is such a tricky stock, because many people, in my opinion, most investors, maybe even most YouTubers, don't understand all these layers that AMD is creating. And the layers that it is creating, it doesn't mean it's going to be successful, but it has the ability, and it's increasing the probability of it actually doing really well in the future. So obviously, you're going to have winners and losers. I, with my risk to reward ratio, really do enjoy AMD at these levels. Now, the final thing that investors should kind of understand or kind of ask during 2025, will AMD actually enter the ASIC market? Like I mentioned, companies like Broadcom and Marvell help big tech players develop their own AI chips. Well, if you're not familiar, AMD actually helps companies develop their own chips as well. Microsoft actually uses AMD to develop their own Xbox chips, and Sony does the same for their PlayStation. AMD in a few conferences has mentioned that there's the optionality for them to enter this same way in the AI accelerator space. I believe if they do that, it could happen in 2025. And since they already have strong relationships with companies like Microsoft, that could be one of their very first customers. So AMD entering the ASIC, in my opinion, could be one of the biggest catalysts. And if we hear that in 2025, this could be a mega return winner for investors. So those are just my overall thoughts, the questions that investors should have for 2025. Let me know in the comments below what video you want me to do next. On the playlist right now, we already have Micron and NVIDIA. Now we have AMD. Let me know if you guys want me to do Intel, Broadcom, Microsoft, or whoever. Take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.